Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. The inauguration of President Lee Jae-myung marks a sharp pivot in South Korea's economic direction. With the economy stalled by weak consumption, global uncertainty, and looming tariff deadlines with the Trump administration, Lee Jae-myung has made household recovery his top priority, launching an emergency task force and fast-tracking a 35 trillion won stimulus to revive local demand. But this isn't just a stopgap spending. His strategy signals a long-term shift to government-led growth with heavy investment in semiconductors, AI, green energy, and defense paired with sweeping labor reforms. All this as the clock ticks toward a July 8th deadline to renegotiate American tariffs. The next few months will test whether urgency, ambition, and execution can align. For a deeper discussion on this, we connect to Song Soo-young, Professor of Business and Economics at Chungang University. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Chae Sang-mi, Professor of Business Administration at Ewha Women's University. Good to see you again, Professor.
Good evening.
So let's start with the stimulus, Professor Song. So this 35 trillion won supplementary budget, do you think this is enough and well targeted for immediate recovery?
Actually, we have no idea whether this is a perfect target and which would be enough to recover the stagnant economy, Korean economy, because the first quarter recently, the Bank of Korea has announced the year-on-year GDP growth, quarter-on-quarter GDP growth rate has been minus 0.2%. So it is a very emergency situation to recover the economy. And also we have seen that some dwindling decreased potential growth rate. So to support and recover the potential growth rate, this is a very emergency situation. That's why the newly elected President Lee Jae-myung has emphasized the point of how to address these economic issues, particularly with this 35 trillion won. And overall, 210 trillion won will be invested as to accomplish the pledge made by the President Lee Jae-myung that top three AI superpower country and 3% potential growth rate of GDP, and also top five country around the world. This will be a very ambitious goal, but still, I believe that could be reached within 5 years, as long as we have managed to navigate through this difficult situation and in cooperation with not only United States but also the other countries around the world.
So let's assume this spending moves really quickly. Professor Chae, what are the fiscal or inflationary risks that policymakers should be watching?
If the spending hits the economy fast, we will likely see a short-term lift, but there are two risks to watch. First, inflation, as you said. While Korea's overall inflation has cooled from its peak, targeted sectors like food, energy, and housing are still under pressure. And injecting demand without increasing supply in those areas could worsen affordability. Second, fiscal sustainability is also we need to watch, because Korea's debt ratio is lower than most of OECD countries, but it's climbing very fast. So if we keep relying on extra budget to solve every problem, future generation will bear the cost. That said, if we treat this stimulus like a bridge supporting people while reforms are underway, it's manageable, but danger, lies in making temporary spending like this feels permanent.
Then President Lee Jae-myung's vision shifts away from the previous administration's market-driven growth to a state-led investment, a stark contrast. Professor Song, is that pivot viable in South Korea's current economic structure?
It is required the pivot of the government policy because, as Professor Che has mentioned, that the GDP, the government debt level percentage of the GDP is just 50%, and it will be expected to grow 52%. This is considering the other OECD and the developed advanced countries' debt percentage of the GDP is the South Korea's the GDP, that's a percentage of GDP, government debt percentage of GDP is too low. So we have a very space room to drive the fiscal expansionary policy. And also the good news is because the consumer price index headline inflation has been reduced to 2%. And even though core inflation is a little bit higher, 2.5% or something, and also unemployment rate is very low. Given this situation, I think there is no excuse not to exercise the fiscal expansionary policy. For the monetary policy, the interest rate is 2.75%, the Bank of Korea's basic interest rate for Korea. So it could be even reduced to almost 2%. So the reason is because our economy is stagnant right now. Therefore, even despite this kind of very strong stimulus and the priming pump of the fiscal expansionary policy, the effect on the inflation is relatively very low. That's why and also it is a good time to borrow more money from the people and even issuing some government bonds, or therefore because the interest rate is low. So that is, of course, this is good news, but bad news or the headwind is clearly from the international side, particularly from the United States, pressure on the Korean economy. That is an obstacle to be overcome.
Right, definitely a big task that the Lee administration has to tackle. Now, so under these policies, Professor Che, public money is to be funneled into strategic sectors like semiconductors and AI. Do you think this kind of narrow targeting really drive a broad-based growth?
Focusing on semiconductors and AI make a strategic sense. I think these industry have massive ripple effect because think of AI as a general purpose technology like electricity in the 20th century. It touches healthcare, finance, logistics, education, almost every sector. But here's the challenges. We only support the giants. We risk creating a two-speed economy, like high-tech elite on one side, and everyone else is struggling to catch up. So to drive a broad-based growth, we need policies that link these star sectors to the broader economy. That means investing in digital training, regional innovation hubs, and helping SMEs adopt advanced technology. So yes, it can work, but only with a strong policy bridges, I think.
Right, so these policies would be able to link the narrow sectors into the broad economy. That would be definitely of a big help. Now, the administration is pairing investment with labor-friendly reforms, stronger unions, shorter hours, and extended retirement. Professor Song, do you think this would help enhance or hinder productivity?
Yes, some pundits are concerned about this could be some trade-off relationship because the pro-labor union or pro-labor policy could be some obstacle and barriers to foster the economic growth rate and maybe against some companies. However, the labor reform is necessary to increase the productivity of the labor worker. Simply increase the working hours do not actually improve the quality of the productivity. Clearly, in order to increase the productivity is a very difficult, daunting job. But with the help of AI particularly, the AI should be useful for the small and medium enterprise to reduce some production costs for those small and medium enterprises. So this could help the small and medium enterprise to survive, and they recover the robustness and the strength and in the wake of some adverse economic situation. And that is very useful AI to improve the productivity of the labor and also small and medium enterprise. And then the increment or increase of the working years, so even to 65 years, that has helped increase the participation of the labor workers in the economy. That could also help improve the economic growth rate potential. And then the international situation is, as I mentioned earlier, that is maybe is very difficult to deal with. But anyway, we have to navigate through, and with a very savvy and some shrewd driving to persuade not only the U.S. and also, as well as we have to satisfy the other countries' demand and also collaborate with them. That is balancing is the most important virtue right now for the Lee Jae-myung's government to pursue for the upcoming years.
A complex situation indeed. Now, so with this on the backdrop, Professor Choi, some people say that the government is prioritizing equity more over efficiency. What are your thoughts on this? And also, could you tell us how we should weigh fairness against competitiveness in this low growth era?
Actually, it's a fair concern, but I'd argue the two goals, like equality and efficiency, are not mutually exclusive, especially now. In a low growth world, inequality becomes a drag on growth. I believe if large segments of the population feel left behind, their consumption drops, political divisions rise, and social investment like education suffer. That weakens the whole economy. So fairness isn't just about redistribution, it's about access, like making sure a kid in the countryside can learn AI skills or a single parent can afford healthcare. Is not charity, it's a smart economics. The challenge is making sure fairness policies doesn't come with excessive red tape or disincentive to work or invest. So it's not equity versus efficiency. The real challenges, I think, is equity with efficiency. And that requires a careful and evidence-based policy, I think. Yeah.
Right, so it's not one or the other, but it should go in parallel together. So one of the most anticipated tasks left for the Lee administration, of course, is tariff negotiations with the Trump administration, of course. Professor Song, at this point, how much leverage do you think South Korea actually have in this compressed timeline?
Before mentioning the leverage that we have in South Korea I'd like to mention the first message from White House on the day the newly elected President Lee has been selected, and January 4th, maybe yesterday. And the first message was that they put the pressure to make the South Korean government to offer the best offer for the negotiation. So this is a totally strategic or tactical pressure on the newly elected government. Just one day old baby government must make an offer to the U.S. government about the negotiation of the tariff. So even despite this kind of a bully-like pressure, our government must be patient and persevere, and then wait. And also, I think the first priority should be to make some presidential negotiation or the talking meeting with China and Japan. So in Asian market and in Asia, the Korean government needs to have talk with Japan and China. Then we need to prepare for some tariff negotiation. But so many other countries are in line waiting for some negotiation. Therefore, it means particularly the European unions and also Canada, Mexico, and first country is the United Kingdom has already made some agreement with the United States, but we don't know because the Trump would like to change his mind and then he would like to initiate some renewal of the trade agreement or tariff agreement with even with the UK, and some domestic some control or resistance against the Trump government administration is also another kind of some fortunate leverage for South Korea government to use. Therefore, the best is just patience, and that would be the virtue needed right now.
Right. Well, it definitely feels like Lee Jae-myung has a lot on his plate. Staying with trade, Professor Che, so balancing U.S. trade demands with domestic politics, especially over beef, GMOs, and data exports seems precarious. What could be a smart middle ground at this point?
This is a political minefield. On one side, we have American trade demands that reflects their domestic lobbying, whether it's opening Korea's beef market or easing restriction on GMO product. On the other, we have Korean consumer who care deeply about food safety, digital privacy, and national sovereignty. So the smart middle ground lies in selective accommodation. For example, we could improve labeling transparency for GMOs instead of opening the floodgate, or we could allow certain data experts under strict privacy protocol using AI to automate compliance. The government should also communicate better with public, showing that concessions are not loose, but trade that secure bigger wins, elsewhere. So this is about diplomatic triage, like give ground where it costs least, hold firm where it matters the most.
Mm-hmm. Now, finally, we are expecting a cabinet shift with the new government, and it seems to be ongoing. Professor Song, what would you prioritize if you were advising the new economic team?
First of all, I'd like to urge the decrease the interest rate on Bank of Korea. And another is because the decreased interest rate is just to help the supply. I mean, it reduced the marginal cost or burden of the expenses for the firms and also individuals who are in debt. The other part is to demand-driven economic recovery is the necessary step because currently the Korea lacks in the consumption and demand, and because of the transient effect of the martial law that was declared in the December 3rd and in 2024. So because people actually shut down their spending and then very concerned about the uncertainty, so political settlement has been achieved. Then the international side problem is actually very difficult to control and maneuver. Therefore, the best one is take time to be prepared for the international issues, but make some prompt response to the domestic economic situation, particularly for about how to recover and increase the demand side. That is the first priority of the government policy that is pursued in the newly elected government.
All right. Professor, thank you so much for your opinion on that. Now, I believe it's time to wrap up our discussion for tonight. Professor Song and Professor Chae, we appreciate your time and your insights. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.